and Tracing Bill to the House.
The question is that the motion be agreed to. Grant Robertson.
Thank you very much, Mr Speaker. And can I just start my speech by acknowledging the role of the Minister in shepherding this legislation through. It is true to see... You like that, Mr Cosgrove? Yes, shepherding. I'll come back to sheep in a minute, actually, as Mr Cosgrove often encourages me to do. But I do want to acknowledge the Minister for his leadership of this issue. As he noted in his speech, this was something that began under the previous Labor government, and in particular on the day that the member for Wigram, Megan Woods, gave her maiden speech. It's worth noting that Jim Anderton had a significant role in the development of the National Animal Identification and Tracing System. Mr Anderton saw, as others involved in the agricultural sector did, that not only did a system of national identification and tracing that was consistent and was not the piecemeal that we had, would allow New Zealand both to avoid significant problems and costs, but also embrace opportunities. And those significant costs are noted have been noted throughout this debate. The fact that a major foot and mouth outbreak in New Zealand could cost this country in the region of $10 billion makes the cost of actually implementing a system like this pale in comparison. And it's quite clear at the various times in New Zealand that we've had foot and mouth scares just what impact that would have on our exports. And so the idea of an identification and tracing system as stopping that, or at least significantly limiting the impact of that, is something that all New Zealanders in the agricultural sector should be pleased about. But also, it is the opportunity that this provides, Mr Speaker, that I think is one of the things that causes me to be really pleased to be supporting this bill tonight in the House. And that's the opportunity to be able to sell into markets across the world that are demanding more and more that they understand the origins of the produce that's been purchased. And what this system allows us to do, to be able to trace to, as the Minister has just said, the individual animal, in this case cattle and deer, that actually allows people to have confidence about the sustainability of the New Zealand farming system, that people can understand exactly where produce comes from. And members will be familiar with the Icebreaker brand. This is something that Icebreaker have done magnificently well, by being able to provide barcodes that people can scan that can link back to exactly where the wool for an Icebreaker product has come from, is hugely significant, selling into markets that are worried about sustainability concerns, that want to know that the product that they are buying comes from an ethical farm, comes from a sustainable farm. And this applies also to produce as well. And in the committee stages of the debate, Mr Speaker, I mentioned a project I'd had a little bit to do with called Paddock to Plate. And Paddock to Plate, I still quite like it. But Paddock to Plate was a project that was about ensuring that the people who were really significant to the New Zealand economy, the supermarket buyers in the UK, would be able to say, with certainty, this is where this produce has come from, this is what we know about it. And I actually think you could take that further than just being able to identify and trace the cattle. What about knowing more about the land, the pasture, for Mr King's benefit, that was involved in the production of these goods? And there is technology available now that can tell us about the soil content, that can tell us about the way that grass is grown. Let's actually provide to consumers internationally the full picture of how New Zealand is creating a more sustainable farming process. The soil, indeed, absolutely. And this is exactly the kind of thing that consumers internationally are looking for. So that's why, Mr Speaker, this bill I regard as a very good bill, because what it does is actually provide opportunity for New Zealand to be able to take advantage of those markets where people are interested in ensuring that they are purchasing sustainable products. Mr Speaker, there is some concern on this side of the House around the question of who's developing this technology. Huge opportunity in this traceability technology, and Surtrac, which was one of the organisations that was helping to develop this, came out of Landcare Research and has been sold off. Now, that's in some ways a good thing for the people who develop the technology, but really we do have to ensure that we keep companies like that going inside New Zealand and make sure that those companies who are developing that technology are supported and understood. Mr Speaker, it is true to say that this bill has had widespread support across the House, as the Minister noted. I understand in earlier readings the only party to vote against it was the ACT Party. They were the only party. I have no idea why. It's lack of freedom for livestock, Mr Cosgrove. That's the issue here. One law for all, and it is. It was discussed earlier in the committee stages whether or not this would move beyond cattle and deer to sheep. And that is the obvious next step, and I know that the Minister's discussed that and said that it is a possibility. But it is true to say that there was reluctance from some in the farming sector to adopt this. It is unusual for the Minister in charge of this bill to be one to be pushing compulsion so hard. He's not a man who usually likes to support the idea of compulsion, but in this case the Minister has seen the wisdom of the fact that we need a comprehensive system. If there isn't a comprehensive system, then we undermine the opportunities that I mentioned before, and we undermine our ability to fend off accusations if there is something like a foot and mouth outbreak. So as the Minister said, the farming community via Federated Farmers did eventually come on board with this. I'm sure Mr Anderton worked very hard on that in the initial stages and obviously carried on by the current Minister as well. And so the fact that we have these systems now in place in New Zealand also brings us into line with a number of our other key trading partners. We look at Australia, where the cattle are already using ear tags from a traceability system. They are also looking in Australia at the lifetime tracing of sheep. And so clearly New Zealand needs to continue to advance into that market. Mr Cosgrove is an expert on the lifetime tracing of sheep, so he too will be able to contribute to the wisdom of following Australia in that particular area. And I do think it's important that this is about market advantage as much as anything for New Zealand, and if other countries such as Australia are going into this area, then we too need to do that when it comes to sheep. So, Mr Speaker, it is with great pleasure that I support this bill. I don't think that it would be, perhaps some people would see it, Mr Cunliffe, as being unusual that the member for Wellington Central is taking such an issue, takes an interest in this rural issue. But the fact is, this is about the New Zealand economy. This is about the strength of the New Zealand economy. It's about applying technological solutions that are developed in New Zealand to be able to establish our sustainability overseas. It is about a clean, green and clever New Zealand. That's right, Mr Cunliffe, and that's why I am very pleased to be able to support it. I look forward to the government extending the process out further beyond deer and cattle to sheep, and to be able to create a fully comprehensive system of traceability from the paddock to the plate, and make sure that New Zealand actually can sell into those overseas markets, being able to say proudly that we are a fully sustainable country and be able to prove that.
Call Shane Arden.
Mr Speaker, thank you for that call. I don't know where